When an American delegation visited Taiwan, Gideon, we saw the PLN enforce a very strict naval blockade of the Taiwan Straits. There's been a lot of talk about whether she intends to make a go for Taiwan in this presidency or whether COVID and the slowdown has pushed any Chinese plans to take over Taiwan out into an indefinite future. What's your sense?
Look, I don't think anybody really knows. What you can see is that China has given itself increased military capacity so that they can give themselves an option, they think, to possibly invade Taiwan. You can look at Xi's rhetoric, which has been ramped it up a bit and said, we can't leave this for further generations. But for the rest, I think it's partly speculation. If you talk to kind of Western analysts who get, privileged information, even they don't really know. But I don't think that the consensus is he's going to do it this year. People talk maybe 3 to 5 years. But I think the fundamental uncertainty is that it's a very authoritarian system. In the end, it's Xi's call. As one Western analyst put it to me, even the most senior Chinese we speak to are just messengers to Xi, and Xi makes the decision. And as we've just seen with COVID, he can change his mind pretty quickly.
Martin, how do you see the Chinese economic story play out from here? It's been the most formidable story in the past 3 decades and more. Now, though, post the pandemic, growth much slower than in the past. Many say the idea of the Chinese economy overtaking America may actually never pan out. Are the best days of the Chinese economy behind it or still to come?
Well, I should say one thing about this conversation so far, which is that India's G20 presidency is a poisoned chalice and nothing can be expected of it because it's not because of India's fault, but because the major players disagree so profoundly on everything, including the time of day, as it were, as we've heard. Now, I think that I recognize that I don't understand the security side of China, but I followed the economy for 30 years, really quite closely. And I think I do have a reasonable understanding of the economy. So the difficulties they are in are structural and deep, and they reflect, in part, the demographic problem, though I think that is exaggerated. We can discuss it in detail. But the growth model they have had which has been a catch-up growth model based on staggeringly high investment rates and has really run out of room. The return on investment has fallen very, very sharply over a decade. This is not new. They've kept it going with massive infusions of debt. It's one of the most highly indebted countries in the world. It is increasingly being cut off from important technologies from the rest of the world because of US paranoia. And the general tone of China vis-a-vis the rest of the world is seen as increasingly hostile, which makes people very nervous about deepening their connection to them, including in East Asia, including very important countries in East Asia, important partners. All this suggests to me that Chinese growth they will be lucky to do better than 3% or so over the next decade, 3.5%. That's still probably faster than the US. So I think growth will catch up, will continue to occur. But the sort of growth we saw in China up to the financial crisis, up to 2012, actually, is not going to recur.
To what extent do you think, Martin, India is poised to benefit from China's troubles? India is trying very hard through production-linked incentives, through the idea of an Atmanirbhar, self-reliant India to attract international MNCs as they look to diversify their supply chains out of China, partly. Do you think India could be the one big beneficiary, or would benefits get split amongst various countries?
My view is, one, that India really should grow faster than China significantly over the next decade or two. All the potential is there. And two, there is a potential here, but I believe that Indian policy will have to change a lot, and Indian attitudes will have to change a lot. Well, essentially what China did to become China was take some really very radical steps in 20 years ago.
What would you like to see?
Open up the economy, open it to trade, invest massively, just gigantically in trade-oriented infrastructure, provide a very, very comfortable home for MNCs like Apple and so forth to make it the main production base, welcome them, have the most efficient, incredibly efficient support for them. And of course, this was helped greatly by the immense influence of the overseas Chinese in economy. This required a wholehearted discipline, which was a strange combination of bureaucratic centralization with very careful but enormous openness. I don't think, from my following India over the last half century, that India really wants to do that, and I'm not sure that even if it wanted to do it, it can, but it will be a beneficiary. There's no doubt. But you asked, will it be the main beneficiary? I'm not convinced.